we'll follow actual panel that we have, the last plenary session, concluding session 8, the summary of the summit, followed by discussions. Professor Dubey is on the way. He will be joining soon. Sir.
Thank you, Probir. So this is part of what we talked a little bit earlier. This is part of our overall narrative project, and this is in some sense showing the power of regional cooperation at the bottom of the pyramid. And it's we are sort of attempting to create a knowledge platform for women's self-employment, drawing on the very positive experiences, particularly in Gujarat and in Bangladesh, and how that can seed knowledge in other parts of South Asia. So my colleague Mohini Dutt, who's here, has been working very intensively on this with colleagues in what we call our Bees network. So you will see more, and I'm sure you'll love it.
Agricultural region. But of late, cross-learning initiatives to neighboring countries.
Where's the sound? Excuse me, could we have the audio, please?
अपना भी कहाँ से जहाँ से ऑडियो होगा वहीं से आएगा
शुरुआत से पूरी तरह ऑडियो है
Nestled deep in the mountains of southeast Bhutan, Kinkar village in Mongar district is a 2-day drive from the capital, Thimphu. The remote mountainous terrain provides few opportunities for villagers to make a living in this agricultural region. But of late, cross-learning initiatives to neighboring countries have brought new opportunities for many poor Bhutanese women. For single mothers like Pen Deki and Kezang Wangmo, this journey away from home has opened many avenues in their villages.
Goma adhiwa ani chila sonam ga tencho ko gilala bralai lha mo ka ni selu masika jongnaru masika ni oma singa diki ni tarana ga japchu rising la yola jongnar bola ni jongnar ga buni yola jaga de nam du de ni la yola inte de ni pickle chet pedang onya chiswa potru chet pe ni juice wa chet pe onya basiola.
Poor women from 200 villages across the country were given livelihoods training by the Tarayana Foundation of Bhutan. Some of them, like Pen and Kezang, were sent to India to receive training by Seva, a self-employed women's NGO. These cross-country training sessions are sponsored by the World Bank-supported Bees network. Bees, or the Business Enterprise and Economic Support for Women in South Asia, is a network that brings together 15 South Asian organizations that work on women's economic empowerment.
Together, all these organizations are reaching about 100 million poorest women in the region.
The Bees network helps poor women in the slow climb out of poverty by teaching them new skills. They learn to process local agricultural produce into packaged food items that are then sold in community shops. Women who are sent to other South Asian countries for extensive skills training might later become trainers in their own villages. The network also helps revive traditional crafts and turns them into viable businesses by linking them with markets.
Grassroots exchanges actually opens a whole world of different experiences, different solutions to all these women. They come back energized, they come back with ideas buzzing, brainstorming.
Hema bewa chinde tiru me mola mapara tiru mindu bola ngachira tiru zo sage nekapra mindu bola son nitsege bazar me tile bhakti jogi sen bamaso karina jogi sen ani sabji berodra gaji berodra anegi lamaten ngachira nimchi la toncha to zago tile yalema om da dala trego ani maten beoda da anegi thagi ani zochagi thagi jondarchi top
Ani besinale ngachi ani tha so peodade alo diswe asichi kangil maju ngachi disu gola gni bere gola leshin begin chui tele alo disu belo tirutani bere asichi kangil majumba dang sochi se yagidi jui se ani hemade cheptade yagidi semera jui se shunila.
Shendu Choden was helped by her aged mother's knowledge of nettle weaving. Nettle weaving is a traditional craft in Bhutan that fell out of use and was revived by the Narayana Foundation.
This is from a plant, a wild plant. In her mother's time, there was some culture and tradition. They used to harvest that plant and they used to weave from that one and they used to wear.
Through the Bees Network, NGO leaders visit network members in other countries. They learn about different sources of livelihood, promoting women's empowerment and forming village collectives. The Manushar Jonno Foundation of Bangladesh is on a visit to the training centers of the Narayana Foundation. These visits often generate new ideas to solve challenges back home.
The nettle weaving group, they are the frame, the waist loom, which are they weaving. I think I took some photo, then also I talk about that. Maybe this frame also very suitable in our area.
Pada so the majoa ngachira yuka debachin rogi besacha sedi mapale methome bate pa godi jodalo kachi thomela royagi jono la ani be bede ngachira ani zum begoneme ngachira ani be yagi joneme se ani be nekapche thomela trembachira thomela ni ngachira yuka bewaje yuka gilamlo su cham chimando sengadi serame sebe.
Bees has financed a number of learning exchanges so far, and the demand is growing. The next phase of the program will include building a network of trainers and financing pilot approaches that will help women producers gain access to sustainable and lucrative markets. Nestled deep in the mountains of southeast Bhutan, Kinkar village in Mongar district is a 2-day drive from the capital, Thimphu. The remote mountainous terrain provides few opportunities for villagers to make a living.
I think we have reached the concluding session of an exceedingly productive 3 days in which the whole idea of South Asia community has in fact been advanced by the quality of the papers and the richness of the discussion. This concluding session, Muchkund, Dubey and myself are co-chairs, so rather than let the proceedings get on as quickly as possible, I will invite Prof to in fact actually make a presentation on the outcomes of our deliberations.
Thank you very much, sir. Summary is discussion so rich, it is difficult to come out with a summary. I have almost 30 pages summary, but it doesn't cover the last parallel sessions. So what I will do that in any way the summary will be, comprehensive summary will be coming out after the summit, South Asia Economic Summit. So I will just, for the sake of time, as also the organizers told us very clearly that to vacate this room by 5:30 because the next program will start. So I just go by the major discussions kind of which is a kind of an outcome. If we look at Honorable Vice President's key message, we start from him, what he said that, let me read out, that the leaders of the SAARC countries have been continuously emphasizing the importance of enhancing economic cooperation for regional integration. At the 17th SAARC summit held in Maldives in 2011, South Asian leaders spoke about to do the more work on the vision for the future development of South Asia, including a goal and elements of a South Asia Economic Union. So that's the origin of, as Professor Dubey in his concluding remarks on the plenary session 2, he said, so South Asian Economic Summit is basically influenced by the 17th declarations of them which had in Maldives in 2011. And Honorable Vice President also reminded us that interregional trade as a percentage of South Asia is not very high, even though in the last 2006 and 2013 interregional trade increased more than double from 10 billion 2006 to 22 billion 2013, and there is an indications, even this small way, about the regional production or regional value chains in the regions, some of the commodities we discussed in a couple of the sessions thereafter. Honorable Vice President reminded us that even though our interregional trade increased from 10 billion 2006 to 22 billion in 2013, many things not yet completed, and progress is, there is a variations across the sectors. For example, we have a SAARC agreement in trade and services, but yet not yet implemented fully. We have a trade facilitations measures, but that has been parts between the countries, not as a region as a whole. And there are issues like many challenges like persistence of restrictive non-tariff measures, and there is a need, as the Honorable Vice President said, the need to harmonize standards, custom procedures, poor connectivity. Some of the major elements that are holding back South Asian integrations, which we discussed in other plenary sessions, in the breakout sessions, include the high transportation costs, inadequate cross-border infrastructure, and absence of regional transit. As a result, South Asian goods often lose competitiveness before they can reach world markets. Honorable Vice President, in his speech, he also reminded us that South Asia is vulnerable to major natural disasters like floods, droughts, cyclones, earthquakes. So an inclusive and stronger regional integration would greatly help in overcoming some of these common challenges in the regions. So overall objective of South Asian Economic Union is to ensure the transformation of South Asia into a peaceful, stable and prosperous region. SAARC countries must consider the mutual benefits that could be derived from the greater economic integration and thereby contribute to the further of their common development agenda. They should therefore collectively address the challenges and that confront them in the process of regional integrations. Then we moved into the plenary session 1, where we have a discussion with our leaders. The session was chaired by Ambassador Shamsaran, our chairman. And some of the outcomes which came out in the plenary 1, which is South Asia regional integration past, present and future, that SAARC can restore peace and stability in the region. Political will of all the members of the region can work closely. New governments, particularly in Afghanistan and India, are looking forward to the forthcoming SAARC summit, which is coming up in this month later. Ambassador Sharan, he posed the questions to the political leaders and also the experts. How do we take the level of cooperation to a different level? Respected Governor Rijvi from Bangladesh, he replied, and in his statement, that people in the region are not bold enough to take bold steps, though benefits of the cooperation are there for everyone. The region shares history, culture and music, share aspirations for the future. There are compelling reasons, that's why, for the region to cooperate. The region leads in poverty, illiteracy, hunger at the same time, and we had before the integrated through communication, rivers, building infrastructure. Our compulsion is security. Security lies within the working as a community. He reminded that need to study and resolve the problem of poverty, terrorism, global warming, which can be addressed through regional cooperations, and attitude of India, which he found is changing very fast towards South Asia. Ambassador Sharan then he posed the questions to the Honorable Minister from the Bhutan about Bhutan, which is the model of South Asian countries, and developed a tremendous amount of hydropower system, doing a very healthy trade within India, and it has a long-term energy partner within India, and how Bhutan is pursuing its economic policy. Honorable Ministers from Bhutan, he said that Bhutan has a long target of 10,000 megawatt hydropower 2020, but at the same time Bhutan is suffering from current account deficit, which is contributed by the import-driven economy. Large number of projects in the Bhutan are in the pipeline, and Bhutan is hopeful that the new Indian Prime Minister, Honorable Mr. Modi, has taken bold steps, and leaderships they are looking for India to give the new leadership to the entire regions. Chairman, Ambassador Samson then moved into Afghanistan Minister, and Mr. Mastu, Honorable Minister, commented that the region should look out the region, South Asian region, where is surplus energy. The surplus energy which can be given to the deficit regions, and by trading energy there could be a possibility of employment. And what we found thereafter, there are questions from Chairman to Nepal ministers. The Nepalese champion for SAARC, and Nepal is driving the economic prosperity for the region. That is the questions posed by the Chairman, and in replying, Honorable Ministers from Nepal, he said that there is a he has been disappointed with the assessment of the SAARC regional integrations. Cost of trade in South Asia is very high, even higher than in many parts of the world. He gave an example of Latin America. Regional institution not functioning, trade is less, inter-regional investment is low, and at the same time he said that we shouldn't underestimate the potential of the SAARC. Practically, we have enough potentials in economic, social aspects of the region's integration process can accelerate. Discussions went on, and Honorable Minister from Sri Lanka, he very much praised the development taken by Indian new leaderships, and new dynamism has opened up, people-to-people contact has enhanced, large number of tourists, particularly from Sri Lanka, coming to South Asia, and also Indian tourists are moving into the regions. Good business for travel agents, hotel, airlines, and he gave huge examples about the Indian companies, like several companies who are known about the product identifications, like hotels by Oberoi and automobile by the Bajaj. What is the way forward we see from the plenary session 1? If we summarize, energy that exists can only be developed and marketed in the regions, but we need common policies. Scarcity of water is very eminent, and we need to recognize the mistakes that we had in the past. Our survival depends on the cooperations. Cooperation will minimize the conflicts, and interests of the smaller countries in the region should be taken care of. So four clear message we got from the plenary session 1. Plenary 2, which happened yesterday, we started with Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. She said that technology, transport and communication facilities facilitates regional cooperation. Deeper integration will take time, so we should not hurry up for regional South Asia Economic Union. Regional disparity needs to be accounted for. ASEAN is a relatively better model where stronger partners takes care weaker ones. SAFTA is expected to create institutional mechanism for regional cooperations. There are many obstacles. She highlighted NTMs, negative lists, different levels in terms of social and economic structure, many unresolved political issues, resources like budget deficits across South Asian countries. She recommended that we may look for regional value chain, labor-intensive productions where this is feasible, and she recommended that we may look at concrete collaborative research in the regional cooperation within the region. European Union is a reference point. Selim Raihan, in his lead presentation, he said that his study indicated there is a welfare loss due to the trade cost. CG simulations provided directions, but yet we are yet to be ready for an economic union. Customs union, for example, according to his simulations, that may not be Pareto optimal. There not be many win-win for all the member countries. What we see the key recommendations coming from this session? External, common external tariff for the customs union. Yes, it is possible, according to his presentation. Common currency for before we move in the economic union. No, it is more time is needed. Harmonization of economic policies. Yes. India should take into account aspiration of all South Asian nations. There are several other recommendations came out from the panelists. Regional investment treaty were very much supported. Trade facilitation measures, solar energy corporations, services trade, strengthening SAC Secretariat. Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Commerce, he very much talked about this, at the end, SARC energy grid may also consider SARC South Asian solar grid. Honorable Akmal Hussain talked about inclusive growth, climate change and environment, strengthening democracy, resolution of interstate terrorism dispute. Ambassador Silkan Sarma, in his presentation, he said the SARC objective is not one-dimensional, common challenges for the SARC region, and there are many areas we look for cooperations. Developing countries only get short windows of opportunities. Transparency and clarity about official records. We need more transparency and more clarity of official records. And there are a high-level intergovernmental panel for, he suggested that high-level intergovernmental panel for monitoring SARC progress. Professor Jim Rello, in his speech, he said there are many lessons we can draw from the European Union. No need to hurry for the South Asian Economic Union. And in the South Asia case, there is we need for both bold vision and we need to have a patience before we move into an economic union. Madam Savitri from SAC Secretariat, she gave the detailed account for the activity that SAC Secretariat has been doing, out of which she also acknowledged there are huge number of NTMs. Countries have to come out with their offer lists. Many countries not yet submitted in services trade. Yes, some progress has been made on harmonization of standards, like setting up the SARSO in Dhaka. Some progress has been made on trade facilitation. For example, SARC now recognizes electronic signature. And climate change agenda not moving in, not at all, despite declarations. The private sector participation is also not visible. Professor Dubey, when he concluded, he gave a very clear directions about what we will be doing in South Asian Economic Union. Out of his speech, he reminded that South Asian Economic Union, this is coming out from earlier SARC Eminent Persons Group study, and he recommended the strengthening SAFTA, removal of the negative lists, focus on some of the areas like investment, services, transportation and transit, value chains, independent evaluation mechanisms. He also supported Ambassador Silkan Sarma's point that there has to be an evaluation group, and also recommended for further empowering SAC Secretariat, and funds should move into to the countries which are economically poorer in the regions. We then moved into a plenary session 3. There was a lead presentation by Nagesh Kumar, and he said that due to the poor land connectivity, cost of trade is very high within the regions. He gave out with some of the numbers across the region from southwest to southeast, and finally he said that border regions need to be developed in the East and South Asia. He came out some connectivity corridors, some railway corridors, road corridors, and he told us that should be more further policy dialogue, consultations, which ESCAP South and Southwest Asia office is doing. Joint Secretary Dr. Gondane, he reminded that SARC is going to take 3 agreements, motor vehicles agreement, railway and energy in SAC summit, next SAC summit, and he stressed about the building the integrated checkposts which Government of India is implementing. He acknowledged that insufficient road and railway connectivity across the regions is the major barriers for the trade and integrations, and he also suggested there is a possibility of having inland waterways connectivity, and we should work more on the air linkages. Madam Ronak Jahan, she reminded us look into the more political economy of our studies and research and recommendations. In my study, we talked about the border trade, which is crucial and high, very important for the regions, and there is a huge potentials which is untapped. We need to remove all obstacles along the transport corridors, back-end infrastructures. We need to look into the common transport policy, recognizing driving license, etc. Mr. Sarawat from LPAI, he made a detailed presentation about integrated checkposts, and many integrated checkposts are coming up. And finally, he said that we need to have single-stop border point. I mean, customs officials from both the countries, they do the border checking together. Dushni Pirakroon from Sri Lanka, she spent time more into financing connectivity projects, which actually not covered in the previous presentations, and very rightly. She covered financing connectivity projects, and she gave out ideas and way forward, like in public-private participations. At the same time, two major issues she highlighted: harmonization of regulatory procedure and setting up dispute settlement mechanisms, and governance and accountability needs to be improved. Plenary 4, yesterday Dr. Anup Pujari in his presentations, he talked about the interregional trade. There are issues about the measurement problems. Bilateral investment protection and promotion agreement, the BIPA mechanism has to be more to stop expropriation by the states and settle disputes. Settling disputes is a big issue. Examples from South Asia, he gave the India-Nepal Cooperation chapter on investments. Trade-based anti-poverty measures, he also talked about. There is immediate needs of investment in the border infrastructure, and which is supported. For example, the allowing trucks into each other's territory up to the customs point, and infrastructure is required. Security threats can be managed through cross-border investments, and he gives some examples in India's northeastern regions involving the people-to-people contacts. Dr. Kelegama, in his lead presentations, he gave us interregional FDI flow in the regions. Outward FDI from the SAARC had come down significantly in the last 5 years, and Indian investments somehow is not welcomed in the neighboring countries. The way forward, we found investment there is a link between investment and the trade. Regulatory mechanism has to be in place, but low levels of implementation and compliance, and we see the restrictive mechanisms. SAFTA procedure is very shallow, and it is not yet encouraged FDI to flow. Dr. Das, Professor Das, in his remarks, he said trade investment links, chicken egg relations, and if we have more economic activity which will attract investments, and trade will move into trade should be encouraged, and higher trade will make an investment to higher. So FDI is in a long-term objective. Sanjay Kathuria, Dr. Kathuria, in his remarks, he reminded the resistance of Indian investment in the regions, and he very much well aware of the fact that Indian investments are not welcomed at all. Interregional differences and investment policies and regimes. Government should proactively support investments. Investments should follow and should actually narrow the trade gaps. Ambassador Farooq Sobhan, he looked for Indian new leaderships in the regions. New leaderships in the region would help investment to rise. Investment flows are determined by infrastructure and connectivity, and there is a need for investment in infrastructure and connectivity. So there is demand side, supply side is very high, and improved security is followed to increase trade. So higher security will lead higher trade, and that will make more investments. Anjum Asad Amin from Pakistan, she reminded the investment crucial for the regional value chain, and trade cannot be seen in isolations. Pakistan is working towards granting India MFN status, and Pakistan has more liberalized investment regime with a minimum ceiling on sector-specific FDI. There are thereafter parallel sessions. I'm not going to read out outcome of the parallel sessions we have. Parallel sessions, just one or two bullet points from parallel session 1 is that everybody in the parallel session 1 NTM is the main the problem in the South Asia. So we have reduced the tariff with the NTM standard and regulations. These are the issues. Mr. Ratna, Professor Taneja, all spoke about it, a very detailed account. In the parallel session 2, which is on the macroeconomic performance and prospects, we found that discussion is very rich, and some of the recommendations came out from that session is we need to strengthen fiscal system, structural situation is not good, banking systems, quality, stock market, non-performing assets need to be strengthened in the regions, in the regional way. There is a huge divergence and macroeconomic challenges are very high. For example, high inflations, high unemployment, and countries they follow low investment, high subsidy expenditure, institutional reforms. Policy consideration they suggested in that session. You need an exchange rate policy coordinations, and there is a disconnect between India's growth and growth of the other countries in the regions. So that has to be stabilized. Parallel session 4 was on trade facilitation and customs cooperation, but discussion was more into the software side. The broad recommendations from that session was that let there be kind of a national single window from all the countries, which will automatically lead to a regional single window, and mutual recognition agreement has to be signed, as it happened between India and Sri Lanka in trade facilitation. That can be replicated in the regions, and drive land port can work like an airport 24/7, and very detailed account where we are lacking. For example, introducing GPS systems, custom transit documentation, electronic signature, etc. There was a session on financial and monetary cooperations. The discussion was very rich, and what we've come out from financial and monetary cooperation, financial and monetary regulation are linked with the fiscal policies in the regions, and we have the weak banking sector, which is basically that helped indirectly the rent seeking and corruptions. Harmonization of public financial institution is required. Some of the factors and issues that require immediate attention is the political environment, revenue, GDP ratios, public services, public infrastructure financing, management efficiently of the state-owned enterprises. There is a discussion also happened on the government versus central bank autonomy. And there are many inadequacies in terms of the global financial architectures. There are examples given by the BRICS nations. They have introduced the BRICS Bank. Recently, China is setting up the Asian Infrastructure Investment Banks. There is a discussion about the SAARC Development Bank as well. And suggestion about the swapping of the currencies. And sometimes, there is an Asian clearing unit. Why not we look at the Asian clearing unit to look at when we look at there is a dispute on the regional payment systems. There is discussion about advantage of the local currency for particularly Indian rupees for the trade, so on and so forth. There are discussions about also look at the technicians from AMRO, Chiang Mai Initiative in ASEAN. ASEAN came repeatedly in the discussions, and the examples of the ASEAN, in particular in the monetary and financial corporations, were given to South Asian countries. Finally, in the session, India has shown very intent towards the currency internationalization and has set up a task group and for the development of the currency internationalizations, and other developments like offshore program, swap arrangements, which the countries in the regions may need to investigate. There was a parallel session about services trade, mutual recognition, trade reforms. The discussion centered around the SAT is in place, but it's not yet implemented. Professor Rupa Chandra, she gave a detailed account about services trade development and what are the drawbacks and where we can do. There are discussions about mode-wise trade and where are the barriers. According to the mode, particularly in the mode 2, there is a potential, but visa is the factor which is restricting the trade flow in the mode 2. In the mode 3, there are problems on investment in services sectors across the countries. There is an absence of consumer protection. There is a need for domestic regulation for the regional cooperation in services trade, regulation for electronic services, and there is a question as to how we should govern the regulation services in the regions. Finally, the services sector conclude that South Asia has to integrate the services sector to have a higher access in the globally. In the evening, we had a special event on India-Pakistan economic cooperations, and that session indicated that India and Pakistan together is actually holding the entire regions, the hostage of development. So India-Pakistan peace is very much important for South Asia countries to have a full-fledged trade and economic integration. So detailed discussions in terms of energy, water flow was done, and given many examples were given. For example, Pakistan can save approximately 1,000 crore annually if they import electricity from India, and there is an electricity grid that they suggested from Lahore and Amritsar, etc. And there are also very weak connectivity in terms of air. Examples given from between Taiwan and China, where there are 1,600 flights moving between the two. So incidentally, air connectivity in the regions, particularly between India and Pakistan, is relatively very poor. And the session on India-Pakistan, they never restricted only on India and Pakistan. They had some conclusions also from the regions. Today morning we had a plenary session 5, which was the value chain. Value chain, even though it's happening only in 2 or 3 products like textiles, processed foods, but there are high potentials in many other areas. Presentations, the lead presentations by Abid Suleri, he indicated what are the barriers, and he recommended barriers to trade regional value chain. Some of his recommendations, like promotion of trade facilitations, trade financing, reduction of the trade activities, investment in each other's countries on the value chain products. Professor Mahanti, he talked about the production fragmentations in his presentations. He given an idea that government intervention is required when we need a production fragmentations to be supported. There are high potential in parts and components trade. Dr. Krishav Das from GIDR, he talked about the requirement of data in service in trade in parts and components. He felt that this is to be needed to better estimate the trade in value-added goods and trade in parts and components. Professor Chaudhary talked about changing the mindset, and Dr. Rajak from Commonwealth Secretariat, in his presentations, he talked about industrialization of the, which will promote the value chain in the region. First, the manufacturing value chain could have the regional character. Incidentally, none of the countries here have a strong manufacturing sector. Then he also talked about the value chain in services sector. Pradeep Srestha from Nepal, who gave the real example, because he is an industrialist. According to him, there are many obstacles: transit costs, transport costs, cost of doing business, not very much forward-looking so far, and very much supported to the regional value chains. After that, we had a general comments on the session on the value chains. We need to change our mindset. Border trade is third category beyond the formal and informal trade, which can promote the welfare of the local communities. Value-added services, like some innovative ideas given, single permit, domestic branding, mutual recognition of degrees, those are also discussed in the session. Plenary session 6, in the food security, the recommendations are basically the regional cooperation and exchange of knowledge and technologies, promote regional trade in food from surplus to deficit regions, best practices for regional food security, capacity development in regional food security, regional food management like operationalization of food bank, seed bank, etc. Cooperation in weather forecasting, early warning systems, which should have a direct implications for food and cultivations. Alignment of food safety and management is very much important. Mutual resource management together with all the 8 countries. National government should take the lead responsibility, and the regional initiative may complement it. Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal have already started commodity exchange program, whereas India has to collaborate. There is no call from India to join. Increased policy coordination is very much required. Strong IPR regime has to be there. Aim for SARC food security standard. We should have technology transfer is required. Management of food wastage, distribution losses, we need to look at very carefully. And finally, empowering women can address the problem of food security. Plenary session 7, which was on post-2015 agenda, major recommendations of that: the South Asia is on the track for 3 and an early achiever of 5 of the MDG goals. So far, the progress of most of the indicators are low. 10 out of 18 indicators are on the below average. The outcome document of the 2012 the Rio +20 conference on sustainable development initiated a process to develop a set of sustainable development goals. This year was the year for the content generations. It is the formulation of the content of the new agenda that is underway. The shaping of the draft agenda after receiving inputs from the various resources is coming to a close. Open Working Group released its final outcome document on sustainable development goals on 19 July 2014. Post-2015 process is currently at a transitional phase. The discussion of the implementation of issues, finance and non-finance, are gathering momentum. Intergovernmental negotiation process will be soon launched. Way forward from post-2015 agenda, the 4-point critical agenda for the South Asia. No one to be left behind in South Asia and average behind in South Asia. South Asia has set up many regional, eliminate poverty, reduce all forms of inequality and discrimination, growth of productive capacity for the decent job and sustainable income, reduce adverse impact of climate change, protect ecosystem and biodiversity, build a peaceful, inclusive society with enhanced accountability and the voice. What are the causes behind the failure of frame of SAARC development goals? The lead presentation indicated 4: lack of political commitments, heterogeneity of the regions, resource constraints and trust deficit. What should we do in the coming ministerial decisions we have to take, and which is the SAARC ministerial meeting on poverty, which was held in April this year, and the SAARC the recommendation for the SAARC development goals and post-2015 goals, which we should look at to support implementation at regional level. SAARC may use and better align its existing mechanism with the post-2015 development goals. 2 needs in the lead presentation highlighted. It is 36th meeting of the SAARC Council of Ministers, which is going to held in 25th November, where we should address the post-2015 agenda, and also in the 18th SAARC summit, which is coming up on 26th and 27th. The way forward coming from the plenary parallel sessions thereafter, Session 6 to Session 10, regional energy security. There is a SAARC agreement is coming up, and the presenters in the regional energy security sessions all felt there is a high potential for regional trade, particularly in the trade in hydropower. In the sub-regions, grids, the sub-regionally are interlinked. There is a need for regional grids. South Asia Development Bank discussions concentrated mainly on not to be overlapped on the existing institutions. There is a proposal for South Asia Development Bank. There is discussion also that South Asia Development Fund to strengthen. There is a session on science and technology policies, very important, and some very innovative suggestions were given that South Asia is a disaster prone, so we need to have a science and technology collaboration among the countries to reduce the disaster among the countries. Examples given about early warning systems, SAARC satellite, and then media corporations. All South Asian media is well represented, and this session was chaired by Chairman of Business Standard, Mr. Nainan. And some of the outcome of the media session was that media actually doesn't report very much on the South Asian facts, South Asian cooperation issues. Only they report whenever there's a need, and that is also there is very high variations. So there are suggestions, detailed suggestions for the media corporations. Media cooperation would certainly is required, is essential for South Asian regional integrations. South Asia Growth Zone was a special address by BIMSTEC Excellency from BIMSTEC Secretary General from the BIMSTEC, and there was SAARC process is going to complement the BIMSTEC process, and there are discussions on several BIMSTEC projects which Excellency indicated what is happening in the BIMSTEC regions, and then there are discussions about experiences on the South Asia Growth Zone, SASEC, on the trade facilitations, regional, bilateral, like in Bangladesh, in the region in South Asia, there was a presentation from the ADB which talked about South Asia Growth Zone experience of SASEC. Now, these are the brief summary of some of the recommendations of the plenary sessions and the breakout sessions. What is the way forward out of this? If I may read out a few more points, almost finished. That economic union is going to happen, but it may take its own course. Creation of South Asian Economic Union would prove to be a milestone in regional cooperation efforts. There are definite advantages of moving towards an economic union, but the roadmap has to be well thought out, and the strategy has to be in place, which is ambitious, but has to be at the same time realistic. Deeper integration in trade should continue. Our immediate actions should be to remove large sensitivities, NTMs, And before we move into customs union, connectivity, be it physical, people to people, digital, have to be strengthened. We have to undertake special projects, be it in software side, hardware side. An efficient, secure, integrated transport network is essential to support the realization of South Asia Economic Union. Some of the regional trade facilitation projects which may ease the way for an economic union. This could be the coordinated border management, regional single window, regional transit. South Asia has set up many regional organizations. For example, SAARC Development Fund, SARSO. There is a need to talk about or South Asian University, SAARC regional institution like SAARC Food Bank, SAARC Disaster Management Center is also have the potential to help address the common challenges in the regions. Proposed institutions such as SAARC Satellite or SAARC Corridor, SAARC Development Bank deserve more attentions. We need to build enhanced connectivity. We need to also encourage proliferation of regional value chains that can pull together competitiveness of each of our countries at various stages of production. This would require greater amount of financial capital into regional investments. The 18th SAARC Summit will be held in Nepal later this month, and participants of the South Asia Economic Summit felt that outcomes of the 7th South Asia Economic Summit will provide important policy inputs to the forthcoming South Summit, and also later on to guide the regional integration process. The respective representatives from all South Asian countries agreed that the way forward is through cooperations. The potential areas of cooperation could include trade, energy, regional value chain, investment, connectivity, climate change, natural disaster, food security. The level of cooperation would undermine the possibility of South Asian and community and economic union thereafter. Therefore, all member countries must work for a prosperous South Asia. So I could draw this is the list of recommendations and summary of the whole discussion of the 2.5 days. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Probir. Of course, Probir there is to be commended on a heroic summing up of 3 days of rich discussion and very heavily documented and analytical papers. So we have to take that into account. Now, according to the fact that we have got 35 minutes and may well be evicted from this room within that time, we have a very limited opportunity for the people present over here to make their intervention. So I suppose realistically speaking, if we have got 6 people over here, I would perhaps assign you a maximum of 3 minutes each, and then I think my co-chair will certainly wish to say something, and then we have to have a concluding statement from the Director General of RIS to bring the occasion to a close. So 3 minutes max, 2 minutes preferred. Let me begin by inviting Pradeep, I think, since you haven't really been up here. You haven't spoken at all. Yes. Thank you very much. So you are generously given 3 minutes.
Would you use some positive discrimination for me, well, since I have not spoken at all? Right. Anyway, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here and to share my own reactions within 3 minutes. I don't wish to give a boxing commentary, but to just highlight a few points, especially in the midst of 2 doyens of South Asian regional cooperation. I think you people have been working on it for the last 50 years. Rehman?
Slightly less.
Yeah. Well, it was a very interesting summit. Looked like a Christmas tree. One of the points which was made by my colleague Bipul Chatterjee is that perhaps if more examples were quoted about both the successes and non-successes. In our dictionary we use only non-successes, we don't use the word failure at all, because these are all deferred successes. That may have made each of the panels or each of the sessions more interesting. Let me take on Gohar's recommendation, which was narrated by Prabir here, that one of the targets we should aim at in terms of the Kathmandu SAARC summit is to seek a high-level panel for regional integration to be headed, populated by at least a cabinet minister from each of these countries, which could then act as not only monitors for the progress, but also be an ombudsman of sort, where we could all go and sort of, anybody could go and raise their grievances as to whatever is the commitment, because we keep on hearing about this commitment for ages, whether it's the food bank or the development fund, etc., but nothing really moves. Therefore, we need that kind of structure. This is one of my first takeaways from this particular thing. Now, it is a no-brainer to say that regional integration is not necessary or not desirable. It is helpful, but there are several deficits that we need to contend with. And what I would suggest to the organizers is to write a matrix of the deficits, the major deficits, and send it to policymakers that, look, maybe a page or at the most 2 pages. I have counted about 7 deficits, and I'm sure there would be more, but don't be tempted to write about every possible deficit, but just the major structure within 2 groups. First is the political economy, political will, which has been spoken about. It is a necessary but not a sufficient condition. Or is it the other way? Someone? Is it a necessary or is it a sufficient condition, or whatever it is? How do we overcome that? That requires a constant push. Now, one deficit which exists in terms of governance is something which, for which we have very little cure, except that I do see some hope as far as India is concerned, with a Prime Minister who's leading from the front to hit out against corruption and malfeasance and so on. I don't know whether that could be a good inspiration for others in the region. The third deficit is, which comes from the second one, is the issue of vested interests. Now, if you look at the India-Pakistan trade dialogue, there is already a block because there are several sectors which will be affected if trade is opened up. The third political economy deficit, there is, Dave spoke about the Sustainable Development Goals. We must realize the fact that overall ODA is going to shrink. Even the European economies are facing a downturn, and therefore, how do we deal with the kind of reducing fund availability, rather than to continue to say that, look, this is a commitment and this is the money we need. I still remember the Earth Summit, $248 billion was committed, of which only $2 billion came out. This is June 1992. So we can't really, budgetary support is extremely important as to then how each country then decides to rationalize its budgets. The fifth, 3 more deficits, another 2 seconds.
Perhaps you can cut out 2 deficits?
No, this is the second lot. Now, information asymmetry, and which then leads to trust deficit. I think we need more dialogue at the grassroots level, which is not happening, rather than in Hotel Serena or Hotel Oberoi or wherever you have. This is something which we have attempted to do. And finally, now, in terms of connectivity, people complain about flights not being available. It's a very simple demand and supply factor, that if there is no demand, there won't be any supply. So how do we generate the demand? Only is by increasing the possible trade and turnover among the countries. Thank you.
Postraj, 2 minutes, please. I know you are now. You have sacrificed 1 to Pradeep.
Thank you, as co-chair and panelist. Well, my observations with regard to this summit, my observation is that the presentation by Professor Prabir is the evidence that we have very rich and productive discussion and have come up with pragmatic regional agenda for deeper cooperation in South Asia. And I would like to highlight just 2 challenges, and also highlight just two areas to be discussed in future South Asian Economic Summit. The first challenge is with regard to the recent positive development in South Asia region. Democracy is flourishing, and at present we all South Asian countries have elected democratic government. However, the issue of regional cooperation doesn't get prominence in election agenda, like in some other countries in Europe or in Southeast Asia. Here our challenge, particularly with people engaged in South Asian Economic Summit, is to make common people, business community, political parties, politicians, to understand the benefits of common aspirations, common goal, common efforts and common destiny of South Asia. And also, to make them understand the cost of not doing so or cost of non-cooperation. So we need, South Asian Economic Summit needs to go beyond sign, symbol and deliberations. This is our, big challenge. The second challenge is how to bridge development gaps and growth asymmetries within South Asian region. And these asymmetries, together with asymmetries in size, has resulted huge bilateral trade deficits and also created some sort of trust deficit. Let me put it bluntly. The challenge for us is how to stop politicians and political parties to gain from creating fear against India. That's our big challenge. And with regard to new issues, well, Guru Charan Das, the writer, says India grows at night when the state sleeps. One issue here we have not delved into is the issue of corruption. And also the role of bureaucracy, particularly in the path of economic union. And second issues we need to address is with regard to functioning the regional power market. We have discussed about regional energy cooperation. Just 1 second. But I need to, I think we need to go, go down further and discuss about the possibility of regional agreement on power trading, regional agreement on power development, and I think, and I hope, we'll be able to discuss these issues in forthcoming South Asian Economic Summit. Thank you.
Thank you. Sobhan?
Thank you, Professor Sobhan. The theme of this conference was towards the South Asia Economic Union, and I think what came out in the first session, where it was stated that this theme should remain in the SAARC declaration, the SAARC dialogue, is very valid, because even if you take previous agreements like SAPTA, that was in the SAARC agenda from about the early 1990s, and only in 1995 it materialized. Likewise, SAFTA was in the agenda from the late 1990s, and it materialized in 2006. So South Asia Economic Union, which has been very well articulated in the Group of Eminent Persons report, if it is to become a reality, it has to be in the agenda, so that heads of states are constantly reminded that this is the ultimate goal that we are moving towards. So in that context, the dialogue from the track to like South Asia Economic Summit becomes important, because the government officials hardly have time to think how to go about getting a breakthrough, etc. So in that context, we have found that for many years, issues have been discussed, as Prabir mentioned, about energy cooperation, transport cooperation, but we have not got concrete breakthroughs. And yesterday evening, when I participated in the India-Pakistan dialogue, what came out was that there was a urgent desire by Pakistani as well as Indian businessmen to do business across the borders. And in fact, the last speaker went on saying, how do we get a breakthrough? And in that context, people highlighted that the example of Taiwan and China, how Taiwan has managed to increase flights to China, and another commentator said that in the SADC, South Asia Development Cooperation Community, there was Southern Africa Development Community, there was a deadlock like in the SARC, and once they started cooperating in energy matters, that they managed to get a breakthrough. So basically we have to find a way where track 2 interaction with track 1 becomes effective, and we could give ideas to get a breakthrough. And it reminded me what Arvind Mehta said in the first session, that when they find very difficult to liberalize under SAFTA, they thought out of the box and told those countries that are resisting to liberalize, okay, you say what are your requests? We will, if 90% of your requests are fulfilled, we will give you, you can give your offers, because they have been delaying giving their offers. So out of the box thinking has become essential. And he also mentioned that for some countries that are reluctant to give their offers, they had suggested, okay, you give your offers for 1 year, and if you feel that your domestic industries are adversely affected, you reverse the offers. So out of the box thinking has already started taking place in the official process. So I think this is in order to get a breakthrough from this deadlock. And I think, you know, if we can address some of these low-hanging fruits where we discussed in detail, like food security cooperation, trade facilitation, etc., if we can get a breakthrough in one of these areas and show results, that just like in the SADC or in the Taiwan-China case, the economic factors or the economic benefits will predominate over the political factors, and we could push the cooperation to higher levels. So in that context, some of the ideas that came up, especially in regard to changing the mindset, having a new narrative in the South Asia, are very much valid, and the media can play a very effective role. I did not participate in the last session on the media. Media has a crucial role to play, especially in regard to the track 3, the civil society, to make them partners in the cooperation process, because if you look at South Asia, even today, it is the least integrated region in the world compared to all other regions, and SAARC has a long way to go. So in that context, I feel that in the Kathmandu forthcoming summit, that there will be some breakthrough, and some of the ideas we discussed here will become a reality in that summit. Thank you.
1 minute. Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me thank and congratulate our friend Professor Sachin Chaturvedi and his able team for putting up this very impressive show, which has become sort of a flagship event for the region. We got opportunity not only to share our views and ideas across borders, but also across opinions. And I think that's where it really matters. We can still have our opinion, but the resolve to work together for a common future, I think that is the most important lesson that one is taking home from here. Well, friends, there are three sort of narratives and three sort of histories. One that is taught and told in my country, one that is taught and told in your countries, and third, which is a real narrative, a real history that no one tells. And I think gatherings like this is an important venue where we can share the neutral component of narrative. We can understand each other's position, and obviously then we can work towards that hidden narrative that every one of us should know and we should pass on to our future generations. Now the two main lessons that one learned from here, one is that we have to follow an integrated approach if we really want to achieve this post-MDG goals. There was hidden conflict between MDG 1 and MDG 7, poverty reduction and environmental conservation, if both of them they were to be achieved in silos. And I think that's what happened. There were certain ministries and certain departments that were working towards poverty reduction, other ministries which were working towards environmental conservation, and they were somehow negating each other's efforts. And for post-MDG goals or SARC development goals, we need to look at a transdisciplinarity approach. The second thing that I want to reiterate is our interdependence. As a region, we are interdependent on each other. Pakistan would only be secure and stable if Afghanistan is secure and stable. And India would be secure and stable if Pakistan is secure and stable. And so forth, and for Bangladesh and Nepal. So all of us, we have very common interest to remain politically stable, to remain politically secure, and of course then to work towards these objectives, whether it's traditional security or non-traditional security threats like food security, food insecurity or disasters. Now towards end, there's a big opportunity. If you see, since last year, there is a huge change in political leadership in the region. We have a new government in India, we have new government in Pakistan, new government in Bangladesh, new government in Afghanistan, new government in Iran, new government in China, and a new legislative assembly in Nepal. So if you see, during last year, almost all the leadership of this region has changed, and in most of the instances, the successors, they were in opposition during the past regimes. So here is an opportunity to make a retreat, try to learn what is it that their predecessor did wrong, what is it that their predecessor did right, and how we can move forward. And we as an academicians, I think, we have a broader role to play. We are not activists. We have evidences, and we are always willing to review our position based on other stronger evidences. And most importantly, the people sitting on this panel and the people here, we are the very few lucky ones who have access to power corridors. We have credibility, we have, and we can access our policy makers. So I think this is where track 1 and track 2 would merge, and of course I'm optimistic that we have to do it for the sake of not only current generation but also for future generation. And we give all our best wishes for Nepal when they will be hosting 8th South Asian Economic Summit next year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. 1 minute, sir?
One breath.
Sir, you love me too much to be that tough. 1 minute. It would be difficult. No, I'd like to join Abid in congratulating our RIS friends. They have set a new benchmark with regard to both organization and content of the size. So it will be a tough act to carry forward from now on. Let us remind ourselves of the title, the theme of size 7, which was towards South Asia Economic Union. And if we look at the milestones from preferential trading arrangements to free trade area, then customs union, common market, and then economic union, you come out with some confusion. Confusion because we have seen in the presentation by Selim that customs union's welfare gains will be at a very low levels and it will be differentiated. India and Bangladesh will gain and other countries will lose. So if that is the case, then one asks, so what should be the intermediate goal? Should we spend our limited resources for tariff negotiations, for common external tariffs, or we should take another route? So there are two routes. One is the European Union route, which has taken about 50 years from a preferential trading arrangement to a customs union. The other is the ASEAN route, where they have gone for, I can see 5 connectivities. And then those connectivities will really form the customs union, the common economic tariffs. In our region, I can see only India as really a customs union. And if you look at the South Asia, it will be very difficult to have those negotiations, because in order to have customs union, you will have to have macroeconomic coordination, fiscal, monetary. It will be difficult. So what are those 5 connectivities? And I can see that Those connectivities are, one is the transport connectivity, which is come out very, very clearly. The other is the investment connectivity. Then you have the trade connectivity, you have the energy connectivity, and you have the people-to-people connectivity. I think if we can concentrate on those 5 connectivities like ASEAN is doing, then customs union will emerge as a result of those connectivity and not the other way around. Because as I said, it will be very difficult to negotiate a customs union. It will take many, many years, and we will be spending a lot of our energy and time on those. So those are the thoughts that I had in mind. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Because the theme of this summit was South Asian Economic Union, and if South Asian Economic Union is defined as freer flow of trade in goods, trade in services, investments and professionals or even labors, I think 2 elements of movement of trade in goods and trade in services are already implemented through 2 very important agreements, that is SAFTA and SATIS. And I have had the great pleasure of doing the study for the official process and also drafting those agreements. Today, trade in services agreement, already negotiations are complete. India and Bhutan have submitted their final schedules except other countries. So the problem is not in terms of ideas not getting realized. The problem is that people don't understand that by supporting SAFTA and SATIS, and especially mode 3 of SATIS being commercial presence, which is FDI, and mode 4, which is movement of professionals, it is essentially, liberalizing factors of production under trade in services agreement. So combined SAFTA and SATIS actually can lead you to South Asian Economic Union. So I think there is some kind of conceptual ambiguity or maybe lack of conceptual understanding, which I think needs to be addressed as a way forward as the first point. Second point is, somewhere someone said that bilateral trade is more than the regional trade. Little does a person realize that trade is always bilateral. There is nothing called regional trade. Regional trade is always a summation of bilateral trade. And you do not have data to bifurcate trade happening through bilateral agreement or regional agreement. And therefore, if you don't have that data, you cannot conclude that bilateral trade is more than regional trade. What kind of a funny conceptual concept is this? Therefore, my short point is, except some people here in South Asia, people are having flawed conceptual understanding, adopting less than rigorous research methodologies, and therefore their recommendations are not finding place in the policy making process. And for you, SAARC has not done anything. UN MDGs missed to 2015 deadline, and now they are going to post 2015. WTO did not function. In fact, Doha round was almost dead, now getting lease of life. Climate change negotiations have not happened. Bretton Woods system collapsed and G20 actually leased a new lease of life to IMF and World Bank. Nothing has succeeded. What is the definition of success and failure? So I think we have listened to this rhetoric for long, and I think we are going to start afresh and infuse a new lease of life to the research and research methodology in South Asia. Thank you.
I think on Upendra's very positive note, we'll bring this session to a conclusion, and I will be passing this on to Muchkund. I will simply make 2 quick remarks and then conduct a procedural process for this. Number 1, of course, is that when you listen to the summaries of this very rich discussion of good quality, you recognize that at the end, the conclusions would probably have come out of virtually every summit that has been held for the last 7 years. And part of this problem arises in the highly normative content of discussions coming out of meetings of academics. But if you have another column indicating the actual outcomes, including the outcomes from the SAFTA process, the results are much more melancholy. And so, in fact, the end result of promoting economic cooperation through exhortation, analysis, and research still remains weak.
And the elephant in the room, which in fact is not here but actually should be here, are the politicians, as in fact Poshraj Pandey pointed out. Actually, whilst we are all having intensive discussions, in no parliament is the SARC process actually being discussed, and it is very likely that our working politicians have little idea or interest in what this is about, so that there are no strong political constituencies to push this forward. So one recommendation for the Kathmandu meeting of the 8th size is, of course, to actually get some live flesh and blood politicians of mixed parentage to in fact actually come over here and actually share their concerns and awareness on SARC, and if you can conscientize them, this will in fact be one step forward. Now, the one procedural development which has to be made is that as with the end of the Olympic Games, the conclusion of this session means that the group over here, who are the heads of institutions, have to formally make a recommendation as to where the next size summit will be actually held, and the host for that will in fact have to formally accept it. So in fact, have you all decided where it will be held? Yes. I presume?
Yes.
Yes, they've all whispered in my ear that it will be held in Kathmandu and that it will be hosted by Swati. So I ask the head of Swati that do you in fact generously agree to host the summit? I do.
Okay, can
Thank
I
you.
2 minutes?
1 minute, please.
Well, is the concluding administration. So first I would like to congratulate RIS, Professor Chaturvedi, Professor Prabir for successfully organizing this flagship South Asian event. On behalf of the participant and personally, I would like to thank RIS team for all the logistics and hospitality. Well, we'll continue our efforts to create a perception of the people of South Asia as a citizen of South Asia, and to make South Asia as an integrated common market. Saudi is happy to endorse and accept the offer of hosting next South Asian Economic Summit in Nepal, and I am grateful to the organizing partners for entrusting Saudi for such a challenging task. We will be eagerly waiting.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will be eagerly waiting to welcome you all in the lap of Himalayas. See you in Kathmandu next year. Thank you.
Thank you.